Have you ever had a person in your life who is very different from you? This can be hard to deal with, especially if that person is someone that you can't get rid of. If it's someone who lives with you at home. Growing up, my brother and I were like this. I was the introvert, and he was the extrovert. I wanted him to sit with me and play all these imaginative games with all of our toys. He wanted to grab me, drag me outside, and go meet all the other kids in the neighborhood. Boom! No way. I wanted to sit quietly and watch a movie. He wanted to run and jump off all the furniture and do backflips and all kinds of crazy stuff. It can be very difficult. If someone that you're in a relationship with is so different from you, it can start to feel like that person is trying to ruin your life. They're trying to take away all the stuff that you want, all the good things. But the truth is that they are just being themselves. They're not trying to ruin your life. We tend to favor the people who are like us. That's the people that we go and make friends with and want to hang out with. And the people who aren't like us, we just write them off and we break relationship with them. Now, this isn't a new problem. This is something that's been going on in families especially since the beginning of human history. This week on Sunday morning, we'll be talking about the story of one family in particular, the chosen family. First Abraham, and then Isaac, and then Jacob, and then Joseph, 4 generations of the same family. And in that family, there was a whole lot of favoritism and the opposite going on. In particular, we think of the story of Jacob and Esau, 2 brothers who were very, very different. Jacob was a man who was gentle, a little bit softer. He liked to use words to solve his problems, high emotional intelligence. He understood relationships. Esau was a man of very few words. He was a tough guy, a man's man. He liked to be out in the field, hunting, killing things. Esau. And what happened is, instead of showing them how they could become friends, relate to each other, their parents picked favorites. You see, Isaac was also a man's man. He liked to be out in the field hunting stuff. He didn't like to talk too much. He understood his son Esau. And so he just straight up favored him. And Rebekah, their mom, same thing. She understood Jacob. Jacob would sit there and talk with her for hours. She understood how he thought, and she could not connect with Esau. So she just straight up favored Jacob. And down the road, long term, this caused all kinds of problems. The end result was broken relationship and eventually war. You see, Jacob ran away from his problems for a long time, but those problems caught him in the end. They chased him down. And eventually, as their families expanded and became small tribes in the ancient world, they almost went to war with each other and killed each other. They escaped it just by a hair. They escaped it barely by following the way that God showed them. And that's the great news. Favoritism and the opposite, there is a way out in the teaching of Jesus. I'm going to read for you from the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus' most famous section of teaching. This part is found in Matthew chapter 5 in the Bible. Here's what Jesus says. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. Now let's read there, love the people who are like you and hate the people who are different. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. What is Jesus telling us here? He's telling us that the solution to favoritism and the opposite is to trust God and love your enemy. Who are our enemies? Well, that doesn't just mean people who have declared war on us. It means anyone who feels like an enemy to me. Anyone who I don't connect with, who feels like the people who are out there that I would rather not be around. If those are people that God has placed me into a relationship with, especially if they're people in my family, God is calling me to love my enemy in that situation. And the great news is that if we take a step of obedience, God will release His power and show up and help us. This week, we're talking about God's plan for peace at home. How can we have peace in our homes? What is God's plan, and how can we follow it? Join us on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. to find out more.